Thanks for coming along to this here video. If you're new here, I'm Cody Pedant, a professional software engineer with a past in catering and a love for video games and game development. In a recent short, I talked about a whole bunch of game projects I started but never finished, and for my first non-short video, I thought it'd be cool to take you for a guided tour of my very own abandonware junkyard, and what I plan to do with it. The first thing to mention is that this game file wasteland didn't happen overnight. Rather, this is a culmination of 10 years of reaching the end of my very short attention span. It's a nice excuse for this embarrassing entourage of estranged entities, but it does mean that I have had to devote a significant amount of my storage space to different versions of Unity, as seen in Exhibit A. The other burden that comes from carrying 10 years of technical regret is keeping a handle on it all. Until very recently, my game projects were spread across Google Drive, Git repositories, Unity version control, USB sticks, and old computer hard drives that rattle more than they really should when shaken. With no further ado, let's dive in. First up, we have Rollable. As its name implies, the core mechanic of this game is to roll a ball. This was my first ever project following a Unity tutorial that no longer exists, but if you're interested, I've linked the asset pack from it in the description. Probably. The objective is simple: collect the flotating yellow cubes. From here I decided to broaden my game development horizons by extending functionality of the game. In this project, my novice ability really shines through, from the environment, entirely made from Unity primitives, to the lighting, to the horrifically buggy implementation. By this point I had a taste for game development, so I ditched the Rollable project and moved on to bigger and better things. After faffing with projects that never even left the planning stage, I eventually got started on the prototype for a project called Experiment 01. As far as I can recall, the premise of this game is that the player was logging into a testing system and completing puzzles. In this, I continued to grow and refine my novice skills, leaving plenty of rough edges as I went. I made the first version prototype with voiceover skills that are only slightly worse than what I have now, sad face, and then never touched it again. Moving on from this, I decided to try my hand at making a 2D platformer game called Fallout at the Disco, heavily inspired by my inclination towards pop punk at the time. I can't show much of this project for fear of receiving letters from copyright lawyers, but thankfully I didn't get very far with this one either, a trend that will repeat itself over and over throughout this video, and probably until the end of my days. After I got bored of the 2D side of Unity, which really didn't take long, I started working on RoboGoSeek as part of a college assignment. The hard deadline and strict requirements really helped me channel my creative juices on this one, and to date, about 8 years later, this is one of the closest to MVP projects I've ever worked on. Of course, it's still riddled with bugs. If you've ever wondered what the digital manifestation of a mental breakdown looks like, this is it. In terms of time from the moment of having the idea to the moment of having the final build, this was my shortest ever project, weighing in at roughly 6 hours from inception to completion. I was in a very dark headspace at the time and turned to development as an outlet. There were no fancy mechanics or gameplay elements, just a calming walk in the rain, whilst I wrote myself a message in the guise of supporting someone else through the same difficulties I was facing. Rest assured, I made it through unscathed. Moving on from the doom and gloom, I combined two of my passions, drumming and game development, to create Rudiments. It was planned to be a mobile application that would allow players to practice Rudiments in an enjoyable way. If completed, it would have had multiplayer races and hopefully more interesting mechanics than just rhythmical tapping. Unsurprisingly, this project was never completed. Last up, we have the Christmas Confetti Collector. I wanted to try making something along the lines of a first-person shooter without having to implement all the elements of a first-person shooter, like a storyline, enemies, anything other than infinite ammo. A gun that shoots confetti into presents and making them explode into a not-so-impressive confetti explosion was apparently my answer to this dilemma. This was my last project before life threw me a curveball, and I stopped making games. My plan with these incomplete games, in order to tidy up my project folder and stop different versions of Unity taking over my SSD like a plague of locusts, is simple. Port all of these into a single project that uses a single, more modern version of Unity. How hard could it possibly be? Now, I know what's on your mind here. But Cody, you said you stopped making games, but you have a whole YouTube channel dedicated to telling us about games you're working on, and stuff. I might have exaggerated a little. I stopped making games for about 5 years, which in my defense is a very long time to stop doing something. Over the last couple of years, I've been playing with some really cool ideas and concepts that aren't completely doomed just yet, and that I can't wait to tell you about. So strap in, hold on to your socks, and stick around.